Okay, there we are. Sorry for the technical difficulty. My name, as you know, is Christian Quintin, and I'm glad to have you tonight. We're going to have a great lecture. This lecture is about the French Renaissance, and I will start by showing you this map, which was made in 1477. Isn't that a cool map of France? I was born, it's even on the map, I was born here in Saint-Brieuc. Of course, the mountain exaggerated, but this is such a lovely map. I thought I would show it to you. So the French Renaissance means rebirth. It was a cultural and artistic movement roughly between the 15th and the 17th century, and it was influenced by different events, such as the early exploration of the world, the advances in mathematics, in science, in astronomy, and the awareness of other worlds with great maritime discoveries. The first discovery was by Christopher Columbus. This is Christopher Columbus. It's painted in 1519 by a gentleman called Sebastiano del Piombo. It's an oil and canvas that is actually at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. As you know, Christopher Columbus was an explorer and a navigator. He was born in the Republic of Genoa, which is now in Italy, and he completed 4 voyages across the Atlantic Ocean that were sponsored by the King of Spain. The map you're looking at was made in 1490 under the direction of Christopher Columbus. And you can see this is France, this is Africa, all those different ports. This was a map that he directed. It was made, of course, by someone else, but it was created on parchment in 1490. And this here is a map of the different voyages that Columbus made. He was looking for China, he was looking for the Spice Island, and until his death, he believed he had discovered these. But in fact, what he had discovered was the West Indies and eventually what is the continent of America. So that was one thing that started changing the world. The world was getting much bigger. Another actually the greatest explorer was Magellan. Magellan was a Portuguese explorer who first circumnavigated the world in 1519 because he discovered the Magellan Straits at the very tip of South America, and it opened into the as yet undiscovered Pacific Ocean. So the world was becoming bigger. This is a map of America from 1561 by Sebastian Münster. He was a German cartographer and cosmographer, and he published a manuscript called Cosmographia, and it's the earliest description of the world. It was written in German, but it was also translated in different languages. And it was a very popular work of the 16th century. This is another map of the world. This is made in 1570 by a Flemish man called Abraham Ortelius. And he's known as the first creator of the modern atlas. So he was the first person, Abraham Ortelius, to propose that the continents were joined before drifting to the present position. So the world is changing. Great discoveries are made. And this is here a detail of the Victoria. Victoria was Magellan's ship. It's a teeny ship that went all around the world. Actually 200 sailors left in 5 different boats, but only 16 of them came back after navigating all around the world for the first time. And this was the boat. This is a replica of Magellan boat. So imagine going on a 2 to 3 year voyage across a world that had yet to be discovered. So the world was becoming much bigger. And another thing that was changing is astronomy. great astronomical and mathematical discovery were made that made the world appear far larger. So it became reason versus faith, basically the belief versus the scientific analysis. This is a portrait of Nicholas Copernicus. It's an anonymous portrait. As the astronomer Copernicus, he defied a long-held belief, and he made the sun, the belief that the sun was the center of the world, he denied that, which got him into great trouble with the church, and he had to recant. This is the place in Poland, in the town of Toruń, where Copernicus was born. Isn't that cool? Cool architecture and decoration of building. And this is the alma mater. This is the college in Krakow University in Poland, where Copernicus went to study astronomy and mathematics. The other great astronomer was Galileo. And what you're looking at here is a sketchbook of Galileo, and it shows the observation of the moons of Jupiter. So he was an astronomer and a mathematician, and he used a telescope to observe the different phases of Venus, and he discovered the satellite of Jupiter as well as the Saturn rings. And this is an illustration of the moon in one of the books he published in 1610. So the world was no longer the same, and what the church was telling people was being challenged by a lot of people. Another great thing that really revolutionized this medieval period was the Gutenberg press. Johannes Gutenberg in Germany created this press, and in 1456, the first Bible was printed. And within 20 years, 20 million books were published, when before you had monks that would copy manuscript by hand. So this is the original Gutenberg press. Another great factor that brought on the Renaissance after the late medieval ages was the Italian influence. You're looking at a tapestry depicting the Battle of Pavia by a gentleman called Bernard von Orly. This is a tapestry that was made in 1528. It's made of wool, it's made of silk, it's made of silver and gold. So the Italian Wars was one of the things that brought the Renaissance to life, to the French Renaissance. The French fought the Austrian in Italy, and so they fought the Habsburg Empire. So, but it brought a lot of the Italian influence to France. This is an anonymous painting, we don't know who painted that, of the Great Battle of Pavia. And so Italy was not yet a country. However, it was just a grouping of city-states like Genoa, Naples, Venice, and Florence, which were very wealthy port for the Mediterranean trade. So, but Italy did not yet exist. Francois Ier, who was king of France, invited artists like Leonardo da Vinci to France, and Leonardo da Vinci arrived with 3 paintings, including the Mona Lisa, which is now in the Louvre. And Francois Ier lent Leonardo da Vinci a castle that he may do his work. So there was Leonardo da Vinci, the influence of Michelangelo and Raphael was also felt. So Francois Ier was a big supporter of Leonardo da Vinci, and here's a painting of the 19th century by Ingres, the French painter, and it shows Francois Ier giving the last rites to Leonardo da Vinci. Other changes were happening also, especially in architecture. So here is a sketch of the new bridge in Paris that was approved by Henry III. It's the bridge that ties the city to the island in the center of Paris. So this was the sketch, and this bridge was approved. And it's the first bridge of past the Middle Ages where there were no houses on the bridge. So here I'm gonna show you a few castles, but here is a Middle Age image of a battle between the English and the French during the 100 Years' War. And you can see the Middle Age warriors. So what happened to the noble warriors with a sword to be replaced by the effeminate court of the Renaissance? This is an animus painting. It's a ball at the court of Henry III, King of France. It's at the Louvre. And what happened is that the king became much more powerful, and he created a court to watch his rival princes, these counts and dukes. So he controlled them by having them at his court instead of faraway provinces that were quasi-independent. So the necessity of castles and of warrior defending the state no longer existed. The king has its own army. So when you had castle like this is the castle of Carcassonne in the south of France, a typical medieval fortress. You can see it's dark, it's austere. Or there's this one in Brittany, this is typical medieval architecture, and it's going to be replaced by castles like this. This is the castle of Azay-le-Rideau, the Rideau, sorry. It was built in 1518. Actually, it took 10 years to build. This is a foremost example of Renaissance architectures. So all the nobles, the dukes, the counts, they built pleasure castle in the Loire Valley, which is just southwest of Paris, and to be closer to Versailles and the court, and to be closer to the king, and especially to benefit from his influence. This is Azay-le-Rideau. This one is the castle of Chambord. It was the hunting lodge. Imagine this as a hunting lodge of Francois Ier, who was king of France. It took 28 years to build this little hunting lodge. And I found inside the castle, this is a detail of the castle. I found these two images of wallpaper inside the castle of Chambord. There's this one, which is just lovely, and there's this one. Isn't that pretty? And of course, there was, this is the castle of Chenonceau, another one. You can see there's no more fortification, no more need to defend the castle. It's a different world, the world of the Renaissance. And of course, there is, this is still the same castle. And of course, there's Versailles, which was the principal residence of the King of France until the French Revolution. So much extravagance for the benefit of so few. So again, it's not my objective to show you what feels to me like stolen wealth. It was said that the only effort that nobles made were to be born. So it is, however, the wealth of this wealthy patron or kings that finance the art and allow us to see this. This is an oil on canvas by a gentleman called Pierre Patel. It shows you Versailles at its very beginning, although the landscape is rather fanciful. This is the room of the mirror in Versailles. And this is the bedroom of the heir to the throne. This is the bed of the queen. Very understated. You know that she did not make her own bed. So this lifestyle, sadly, would one day lead the king and the queen to the guillotine. Another great form of art of the French Renaissance was engraving. Engraving allowed people to see images, regular people. So it became a very popular method of illustration and storytelling. This is a tournament, if you will, at the Hôtel des Tournelles, where Henry II, King of France, was accidentally killed. And you can see at the bottom here, it's a Rex Henricus, which means King Henry. So this is an engraving on copper plate. An engraving on copper plate is you take a copper plate, you cover that plate with wax, and then you take a stylus or some metal instrument, and you make lines on the copper plate. So you're scratching the layer of wax, and then you place that copper plate into a bath of acid, but the acid only bites where the wax has been removed. So that's a copper plate, and that is an engraving. So they became very popular with the regular people. These were popular engraving of the time. This is a deer hunt. It's an etching on paper. It's by a printmaker called Jacques Callot. He made around 14 different etchings, which chronicle the lives of people, the court, soldiers, and landscapes, and so forth. This one is called The Misery of War, the Hanging. And I don't know if you can read all French, but I can. And at the bottom here it says, at the end, these thieves, infamous and lost, as unhappy fruits hanging by the tree. And he made this wonderful engraving of people fighting a duel. Another famous engraver was Abraham Bosse. He was born in the city of Tours in the Loire Valley around 1600. His father was a tailor and Bosse was a printmaker, and he did most illustration for book. But what he did is he depicted daily life and clothes in great detail. So this is engravers at work. So images like this were spread all over France and became very, very popular. This one is a sculptor in his studio. So it's interesting to see how people were dressed. This is, as you can see, 1642 here. And here is the gentry, the noble, visiting the prison. So you can easily see who has shoes and who doesn't have shoes. And talking about shoes, this is the shoemakers. This is an atelier, a workshop where people made shoes. So such images became very popular, and people had them on their wall or cut them up from book. Another great engraver, this guy was Daniel Rabel. He was an engraver. He was also a botanical illustrator. He was the official artist of Henry III, and he did set design for theaters. So this is the Royal Ballet de la Douaire, of the Dowry. And it was a ballet that was performed at the Louvre. And the young King Louis the 13th was also a performer. And it was common for royalty to perform in theater or in play. This is a sketch, a theater sketch for the Grand Ball. And this one depicts the procession of foreigners. It's a watercolor on vellum, which is calfskin. And the last one I have of his, this is the entry on stage of the owls and the crows. Hibou et Corneille, those are the French terms. I wanted to show you some of the dance of the Renaissance. This is from a gentleman called Henri de Gissy. He was an artist and a designer, and he held the post of drawer of the chamber to the king. So he was also responsible for the elaborate costume of the king's ball. So this is Louis XIV. Louis XIV was named the Sun King. And so this is the costume he designed for the king. The ballet was choreographed in 1653, and the ballet lasted 12 hours from sundown to morning, and it comprised 45 different dens. And Louis XIV, the Sun King, appeared in 5 of those dens. And of course, he appeared as Apollo, the Sun King. This is not a great painting by any means, but it tells you a story and you can see how people are dressed. This is the wedding ball of Henri, who was Duke of Joyeuse, and a lady called Maderic de Vaudémont. This is an oil on copper that was painted in 1581 that is at the Louvre. So it's interesting to see how people were dressed, especially when they were going out to a ball, which was a rare thing to see. This is a ball at the court of Henry III. It's also at the Louvre, not a great painting either, but it tells you a lot about the way people lived and the way people dressed during the French Renaissance. This is a painting by Jean-François de Troyes, and it's called Before the Ball. So this woman, noble woman, being prepared by her lady in waiting before the ball. You also had sculptors. This is an unusual sculpture by a gentleman called Michel Colombe. This is Saint George fighting the dragon. It's marble and it measures 72 inches wide. I only chose very few sculptures, but this one here is really extraordinary. This is a double face of Prudence. This is above the grave of Francis II, who was Duke of Brittany. That's where I'm from. And the female face that you see depicts his daughter Anne of de Bretagne. Isn't that a beautiful sculpture? This is Prudence. This is the Maître de Chaource, meaning the master of a place called Chaource. We don't know his name. He's an unidentified sculptor of the 15th century. And this is Saint John Baptist, which is placed in his coffin. And I wanted to show you a few details so that you can appreciate how exquisite these sculptures are. Another thing that progressed was, of course, science. And I wanted to show you a few scientific instruments. This is called a graphometer. It's made by a gentleman called Philip Dunfree. He was a designer and a maker of mathematical instruments. He was born in Brittany. And the graphometer that you're seeing is a surveying instrument to measure angles. And this one is also made by him. This is called a paper astrobal. It's an astronomical instrument that it was a model, if you will, of the universe. And this one is made by a sculptor. This is a microscope done by a gentleman called Philippe Scaffieri. He was a sculptor born in 1774, and he designed this microscope, which was made in bronze, enamel, glass, and brass. So it's not just a mind-blowing instrument. So I'll show you some painting now. Just wanted to set the tone to show you that it was not only painting that was made. This is Jean Cousin the Elder. He was born in 1500. He was an engraver and a painter. This is a famous painting that is at the Louvre called Eva Prima Pandora. It's an oil on panel. His son was born in the town of Sens, and he created this drawing book for anatomical drawing. So this is a book of portrait drawing, which it's written at the top to show the proportion and measure of the head with a 3/4 view. And this one is the proportion of the measure of a woman and child. And this book was published in 1595. So now, after the Gutenberg press, a lot of books were published and knowledge was now shared by many, many people. This painting is by Toussaint de Breuil. It's painted in 1561. It's at Le Louvre, and it's a painting of Hyacinth and Clement morning toilet. It feels very modern. The great painting is this one, which is anonymous. We don't know who painted it. This is a portrait of Sibylle of Cleve Julia Berg. People really, nobility had a lot of very long names and a lot of titles, and they're very proud of it. She was the daughter of the Archduke of Austria. This is painted in 1576. It's an oil on panel, and it's the only painting we have of this gentleman. We don't know his name. He's only known as the master of AC monogram. All we know is his initials. But it's a curious painting, an extraordinary painting, actually. This is a painting by Etienne du Monstier. He was a Renaissance portrait painter of the royal family. He was born in 1540, and he was patronized by Catherine de Medici, who was the Queen of France by marriage to Henry II. So this is a portrait of her. We don't know who the woman is. And this is a portrait by Etienne du Monstier of Henry III. It's an oil on panel, and it's rather striking. So Henry III was King of France. He was also King of Poland, and he was Grand Duke of Lithuania. You could acquire territory just by marrying someone, and all of a sudden you had 3 or 4 different countries under your belt. One of the famous French kings during the French Renaissance was Henry IV. He's one of the most well-known and revered French kings. It's kind of an awful painting, but it's very quaint. It's made by a gentleman called Jacques Boulben, and you can see the King of France around 1600. It's an oil on canvas. And here's another painting of him by Franz Bobus the Younger. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. And this is an engraving that shows the assassination of Henry IV by a fanatic called Francois Ravaillac, that you can see here stabbing the king. And this is a parliament decree that condemns Francois Ravaillac to death, but not any death. This was an extraordinary death where I'm going to translate this area for you. It's all French, and it says that they would put clamps through his breast, his arm and thighs, and especially the hand that held the knife. He would be burned with sulfur. On him would be poured melted lead and boiling oil. The arms and his legs would be torn in 4 different directions by 4 different horses. The rest would be burned on fire, and the ashes would be thrown to the wind. And this is an engraving showing the highest and powerful Henry the Great as he lay in state after his murder. So such images were very popular. This is how people perceive how the world was. And that was the only knowledge they had of the kings. This is a painter called Hyacinthe Rigaud. He was born in 1659. He was very famous for his portrait of the French nobility. And this is a self-portrait, but he's famous for this painting. This is Louis XIV, the Sun King. It's an oil on canvas that measures 10 feet by 7 feet. So a painting that is appropriate for a man of this stature. So you can see that the Renaissance changed the world of the Middle Ages. You no longer had a warrior with a sword, you had a rather effeminate king. Look at his shoes. You know, this is not a man that was about to fight. And he is the one that created Versailles. A great painter of the Renaissance was Corneille de Lion. He was a painter he mostly painted portrait, and he was active in the town of Lyon in the southeast of France, and he was born at the beginning of the 16th century. This is a painting of Lady Janet Brandon. She was the Duchess of Suffolk. She was a noble woman who lived at the court of three different kings of England, Henry VIII, Edward VI, and Elizabeth I. So Corneille de Lion portraits in general are very, very small. They range from the size of the postcard to about 8 by 10, and he worked mostly in oil on panel. This is a painting with the frame of a lady called Madame de Chatillon. And I tried to find out a little more about her, but I was unable to. This is a painting of Isabeau de Savoie. She was the Comtesse du Bouchage. She was a countess. It's an oil on panel that measures only 5 by 7, but it is an extraordinary painting. It's absolutely beautiful. She was a lady in waiting of Eleanor of Austria. And since we talk about Eleanor of Austria, I tried to look for an image of her. This was Eleanor of Austria. This is a painting by Jos van Cleef, who was actually a Flemish painter. Same artist. This is a bearded man with fur. It's at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. And this is a bearded man with glove. It actually reminds me of Van Gogh, of a piece by Van Gogh. This is an oil on oak wood. It was painted in 1540, and it's also at the Museum of Art in Vienna. This one is Marie de Guise. She was the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots. So it's confusing because this woman, Marie de Guise, oops, sorry, I got to admit someone. It's a little confusing because Marie de Guise, she ruled the Kingdom of Scotland on behalf of her daughter. So she was the Queen of Scotland, but her daughter was the Queen of Scots. So she was the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots, and this is the painting by Corneille de Lion. And this is his last painting I'm going to show you. Oh. This is a painting of Louise de Halluin. It's an oil on panel. It's painted in 1555. It's actually at the Art Institute of Chicago. She was the maid of honor to Catherine de Medici, who was the wife of Henry II. So his portraits are rather extraordinary. And even though they feel very simple, there is great mastery with his work. I'll show you just one painting by this gentleman that I found curious. This is an artist called Daniel Dumonstier. He was born in 1574, and he mostly drew portraits of the major figures of the 17th century. This is Charles I, who was the Duke of Mantua. There were a few landscapes, but very, very few. This is Claude Lorrain, also called Claude Gelée. He was named after the province of Lorraine in the east of France. He was a painter and a nature, and he did mostly landscape painting, but the figures were inspired by the Bible or by the mythology. So this is early 17th century. It's a seaport at sunset. It's at the Louvre. Whoop. This is the embarkation of the Queen of Sheba. It's another mythological story. The Queen of Sheba is a figure that was mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, and in the original story of the Bible, she brings a caravan of valuable gift to the King Solomon, the Israelite King Solomon. And this is a painting of Ariadne and Bacchus at Naxos. It's an oil on canvas. It's also a mythological story from the poets, the Latin poet Catullus and Ovid. And Ariadne, that you can see at the bottom, she has a broken heart when Bacchus, the god of wine and revelry, appears right here. The next few paintings will seem very surreal and very unlikely to be from another era than, because they look like Dali. This is a painting by Didier Barra, and not much is known about this man. It's not a great photograph that I could find, but it's rather extraordinary artwork. It's kind of reminiscent of Dali, but this gentleman was very successful because he painted a lot of cityscape, and he often painted scenes with decrepit building, ruins, and barren building in an apparently post-apocalyptic landscape. This piece is really reminiscent of Dali, and I tried so hard to find a higher resolution image, but I could not. This is a painter called François Denomé. He was a French painter that was actually active and very successful in Italy. This is the explosion in a cathedral. It's the king of Assa destroying the idols. So an iconoclast. It's an oil on canvas measuring 32 by 50. It's highly, highly unusual. And the other painting I found of his, not of very high resolution, is this painting. This is painted in 1625, and it's Samuel. I don't know why I have this stuff at the bottom. This is Samuel anointing. Oh, I have somebody trying to get in for the fourth time. This is Samuel anointing Saul. You can see very unusual style. A very different artist and very popular artist was, trying to get to the next picture, is this guy. This guy is Nicolas Jean-Baptiste Raguenet. And he's very well known because he painted views of Paris at the turn of the Renaissance, the end of the Middle Age. So his images, this is what we have left of what Paris used to look like. So he did a lot of view of the Seine with almost photographic precision. So these paintings have a lot of historical interest in addition to the artistic value. This is another view of Paris, of the Hôtel de Ville and La Place de Grève in Paris. None of these buildings exist. They were all demolished. He did this one. You see this old Middle Age, and you can see Notre Dame in the back. This is what Paris looked like. This is a painter called Trophine Bigot, and Trophine Bigot was named the candlelight master. And this is one of the painters that made use of a treatment which is called chiaroscuro, which is the treatment of light and shade that Rembrandt made very famous. So this delightful image is a painting called Judith Cutting the Head of Holofernes. It's a Bible story. It's a Catholic Old Testament. The general Holofernes was an Assyrian general who was about to destroy the home of Judith. And Judith seduced him, got him drunk, and after he passed out, she decapitated him. So very happy pictures, like many pictures that were brought from the Bible. And this is another piece, again, that used chiaroscuro, the extreme light and shade. And this is Saint Sebastian, who is nursed by Saint Irene. And what she's doing is bleeding him, because bleeding was one of the medical approach of the time. And they used it extensively. You had a headache, they would bleed you. You had a stomachache, they would bleed you. It was an all-around remedy, if you will. But the greatest painter of chiaroscuro of the Renaissance was undoubtedly Georges de la Tour. Georges de la Tour was really the master of chiaroscuro. He was a Baroque painter born in Eastern France, and he painted a lot of religious scenes lit by candlelight. And this is Mary Magdalene in measures 52 by 40, and it's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He was the Mary Magdalene, for those who don't know, like me, was the woman who traveled with Jesus and was present during his crucifixion. This is Joseph the carpenter, and his son Jesus. It's an oil on canvas that measures 53 inches by 40, and it is also at the Louvre. This is a famous painting by de la Tour. It's called The Dice Player. And you'll notice that I don't spend much time doing an analysis of each painting and telling you what you should like or why this is such a great piece. And it's not what I do. I think you only see the piece for a few seconds, and I want you to just appreciate it without someone telling you what part of the painting you should appreciate. So this is called The Dice Player, but I can only say that the light is absolutely extraordinary. And these people painted with candles. So I have no idea how they can paint something like that with such mastery. This is called The Fortune Teller. And you can see the old woman telling his fortune to this nobleman while apparently a gypsy woman is stealing from his pocket. And this is called The Cheat with the Ace of Clubs. It's 38 by 61. It's at the Louvre Museum. This is a painting by François Quesnel. He was a French painter that was born in 1543. He died in Paris in 1619. This is a portrait of a lady in a black robe. It's a 16th century painting. We don't know who the woman is, but it's quite quaint. A lot of paintings that I show you are not necessarily great, but they're really amazing to see. And if you had the original, you'd be quite blown away. So it's kind of a naive painting, but it's still a very strong image. And this is the painting he made of Henri de Valois, who was the King of France and King of Poland until his assassination. And François Quesnel was unusual. He also did map making. This is a rather extraordinary map he did of Paris. I can't blow it up for you, but every building is painted. It's rather amazing, and you can see Notre Dame, if you can see my cursor, is right here. Another unusual painter, and now this is a little bit after the Renaissance, this is getting to the French Revolution. This is an artist called Hubert Robert. He was a French romantic painter, and he was arrested during the French Revolution. And during his 10 months of detention, he made a lot of drawing. He painted like 53 canvases, and a lot of it had to do with his life in prison. And he was a friend of Robespierre, and he was a very, very lucky man. He was supposed to be guillotined, but through an error of the administration, another prisoner with the same name was guillotined in his place. So he made it alive. So that's quite a story to tell. This is one of his paintings. And this is a hermit praying in the ruins of a Roman temple but there's a lot of mockery. You can see the woman making fun of the monk. It's a bit sacrilegious. One thing that François Ier of France created was the School of Fontainebleau. It was a school created by the king, and a lot of artwork came from that. So the last three paintings I'm going to show you came from the School of Fontainebleau, and all of them, even though they're great, each one of them is anonymous. This is the first one. This is the Allegory of War. It's a 16th century painting. It has a Middle Age feel. It measures 29 inches by 57 inches. We don't know who painted it. We're not exactly sure what it's about, but it is the Allegory of War. And I don't know the person that is in the center. The last two paintings I will show you are very, very famous. And it is unusual that they're very famous, but they're also anonymous. We do not know who painted them. This is, it's called The Huntress. It's 1550. And as I said, the last two paintings, not only they're anonymous, but they're both going to depict mistresses of the king. These depict Diane de Poitiers. She was the mistress and the advisor of Henry II, and she was a major patron of the French Renaissance. And the last painting, I keep it for last because it is the great work. This is the portrait of Gabrielle d'Estrées and her sister, the Duchesse de Villars. This is an old of canvas that is at Le Louvre, and she was a mistress and a confidant of Henry IV, and she's actually the woman that persuaded Henry IV to renounce Protestantism for Catholicism so he could become King of France. So this is what I had to show you today. So can you guys unmute yourself?